r/Nosleep. Posted by u/bornbeach. My grandmother died and passed down her cabin to my brother and me. We just discovered a secret she had hidden from us for 2 decades. Part 4. Eric and I ran so hard that my lungs felt like they'd caught fire. Exhausted, I fell to the dirt with a groan. The pain of my smashed face, broken wrist, and a lifetime of poor decisions had finally caught up with me. I'm done, I breathed. Eric doubled back, crouching next to me. Take it easy, man. Look. He pointed ahead. We're nearly to the river. Let's get you some water. So we were. Now that I was catching my breath, the rest of my senses seemed to sharpen again. I could hear the rushing current just barely through the howling wind. I pushed myself to my feet and the two of us made our way to the bank, where I dropped to my knees and slurped as much water as my mouth could hold. Pass me the book, Eric said. I reached inside my jacket and handed it to him, its pages rolling in the storm. He held it closed, up to the light of the moon. The entire time you had this, he said, squinting at the cover. And you never noticed the author? I looked at him, wiping dribbles of water from my mouth. I mean, it's not like I've had it my whole life. I left it here when we went home. I really didn't need any mementos of that week. Who wrote it? Grandma, he said incredulously. He turned the book toward me and jabbed a finger at the bottom text. Gail G. Fostro. Well, I'll be damned. Don't sweat it, Eric said, shaking his head. I missed it on first glance too. He glanced around, no doubt scouting for a place free from wind with enough moonlight read by. Eventually, he settled on a large boulder near the water, shielded from the storm by a gnarled fir tree. He clambered up it with some effort. Did you know she was a writer? He called down to me. Not at all, I said. Come to think of it, I had no idea about anything Grandma did, besides come over every Christmas and bake apple tarts. Mom never talked about it. Eric flipped the book open to the first page and adjusted his glasses. Mind keeping a lookout while I peruse this thing? I nodded, rising from the riverbed and looking up and down the shore. No sign of the man, and no sign of the beast that destroyed the cabin either. So far so good. I cradled my broken wrist and breathed a sigh of relief, pushing it out of my blood-caked nostrils in a painful snort. I hiked up the side of the bank, getting to higher ground so I could better keep watch over the area. As I did, the book played in my mind. The mysteries of the cryptids. Why would Grandma write something like that anyway? For kicks? She'd never so much as mentioned the Loch Ness Monster or abominable snowmen growing up, and here she was a supposed authority on them. It seemed bizarre to me, but then, all of this did. Had she known about the man too? What about the beast? She must have. Something splashed in the river, and the hairs on my neck stood on end. I swallowed, my eyes searching up and down the running current, scanning every outcropped rock and wayward branch. Just a fish. Hopefully. Seconds turned to minutes, the only sound coming from the croak of river toads and Eric flipping through the pages of mysteries. Maybe I was making a bigger deal about things than I needed to. I closed my eyes and tried the breathing exercises my therapist recommended. Then another splash. This one closer. Louder. I strained my vision. Even beneath the glow of the full moon, the river's dancing waves were difficult to keep track of. Light gleamed off of them one moment, then died the next. Small flickers caught my eye, but when I'd look, I'd see only dark water staring back at me. Was something swimming toward us? Eric flipped another page of the book nonchalantly, his expression thoughtful, eyebrows furrowed in focus. He hadn't noticed a thing. Something felt wrong though. It was the same feeling I'd had when I first came upon the man by the river, like my mind was picking up on things that I hadn't yet fully processed. Eric, I called, taking a couple steps on the stone shore. Come away from the water. He looked up, perplexed. Why? He adjusted his glasses and looked around, holding his hair against the wind. Is something here? I need the line of the clearing to read, Matt. Just get off the fucking rock, man. Come over to me. I glanced upward, the moon shone, pale and ominous through drifting clouds. There's plenty of light over here. I'm nearly finished, just relax. Now, man. Groaning, he creased his page and closed the book, then slid down the big rock, carefully. He steadied himself on the wet, clacking stones as he walked towards me. Fuck sakes, Matt. Another splash. The day we met the man by the river, I said, the pain in my wrist fading against the backdrop of my mounting fear. I came back down to the water. What? Eric said, bracing himself against the roaring wind. I forgot the book. Jake brought us down fishing rods, Remember? I was so excited that I'd forgotten all about mysteries. I left it on the riverbed. I was transfixed by the river now. Something was in there, I knew it. When I came back down to get it, I saw something in the waves. Like a fish? Eric said, finally reaching me. He turned, following my gaze to the river, though he looked skeptical. I shook my head. Bigger. I think. I don't know. I just grabbed the book and ran. Another splash, this one near the shore. I backed up, nearly slipping on the stones. Behind us, the pitch black of the woods, and in front of us, whatever lurked in the water. You hear that? I said. Eric nodded, stashing the book in his pocket. After what happened earlier, I say we don't take any chances. Let's find somewhere safer to read. Where though? The woods? We'd get lost, and there was no question of that. Back to the cabin, or whatever was left of it? No point, the car was totaled, and besides, whatever beast had come knocking didn't sound nearly as reasonable as the man. It was probably still around. No, we were re-signed to the river. We just need to be careful, and stay as far from the shore as we could. Good Lord, said a voice nearby. I jumped, my arm flying in front of Eric instinctively. You boys have really worked yourselves up, haven't you? I wheeled around to see a familiar face standing at the height of the river bank, a stone in his hand. He hurled it, and it landed in the water with a heavy splash. Uncle Jake? I shouted. He began walking down the bank. Slowly, with a sway in his step. Like he'd been drinking. Good news, boys. He shot us a smile, but it felt wrong. Horrible. His eyes were unfocused, and his tongue lolled from his mouth. I just found Griff, and he can't wait to see you. Uncle Jake ambled toward us, his pace irregular. One moment he moved slowly, the next frantically. His head seemed loose on his neck, rolling about with his momentum. I was so worried about you too, he said. Matt. Eric muttered. I held up my hand indicating for him to be quiet. I was uncomfortable about all of this too, and Jake didn't seem like himself. After everything else that had happened tonight, I wasn't taking chances with anybody, family or otherwise. But still, I needed to know what the situation was. I needed to hear him speak. My eyes darted around, taking stock of our surroundings. If it came to a fight, I wanted to be ready. I cursed myself for letting the man take the fire iron. Still, there was always the river, and in a 2-against-1, Eric and I had a chance against our uncle, even with my busted wrist. I swiveled my gaze back to Jake. He was only a couple car lengths away from us now, and I could see him more clearly. His eyes were pale, milky and faded, like he was drugged. His mess of dark hair shot out from all angles beneath his trucker hat. I'd never seen him in such a sorry state. Boys, he said, burping. I just need to talk to you for a second. About Griff. He's just up ahead, but he's scared of the water. He gestured toward the wood, swaying on the spot. Come see him? I didn't say anything. I knew Griff was dead. I pulled his scorched skull out of the fireplace myself, and Eric had been there with me. Jake took a couple frantic steps forward. I recoiled, putting myself in front of Eric. Call it older brother instincts, call it stupidity. All I knew was this cabin wasn't going to claim any more of my family. Ah, Jake said, stopping and tilting his head. Are you afraid? Another burp. Of me? What's going on here? I said quietly. I'm talking to my nephews, he chuckled, feet dancing to keep his balance. Come on. Matthew. Eric. Let's go. Another step forward. Don't take another fucking step. I shouted. Stay the hell back. He paused, his demeanor changing. His face drooped, his sing-song smile replaced by a snarl showing a row of yellowed teeth. You boys were supposed to join us a long time ago, you know. But she got soft. What? No she didn't, Eric said, stepping out from behind me. He held the book in his hands, holding it up to Jake. She realized how sick this whole thing was. She spared us. I had no idea what either of them were talking about, but Eric had clearly read something in mysteries while up on that rock. And whatever he'd read, Jake knew about it too. Spared you? Jake spat. He took off his cap and chucked it to the side, the corner of his mouth twitching. At the cost of the rest of us, maybe. He took a shambling step forward, his eyes cold with menace. What makes you better than me? I knelt down, using Eric's tall frame as cover from Jake's vision. My good hand found a decent-sized rock, and I clutched it, rising back to my feet and placing it in my jacket pocket discreetly. We're not better than you, Eric said. But that doesn't mean we deserve to become monsters either. Deserve to become monsters? What the hell had Eric read? You think I'm a fucking monster? Jake bellowed, eyes bulging. He slammed his finger to his chest. I'm a product of progress, just like you should have been. My heart thundered. I didn't know this man anymore. Have you been drinking, Jake? I hoped the answer was yes. I needed something to make sense tonight. Drinking? Jake said, his wild, cataract eyes looking from me to my brother. You ain't told him yet, have you, Eric? Didn't invite him to your book club? What's he talking about? Eric swallowed. He's talking about mysteries. No shit, I said, getting impatient. What about it? Help me the fuck out here, man. I'm sorry, he said, shaking his head. More anxiety. When it came down on Eric, it came down thick. The book's written like an autobiography, Matt. I thought it was a stupid pulp novel Grandma wrote, but it's like research notes, man. Research notes? Jake took another half step forward, and my hand tightened around the stone. Stay back, I'm not kidding. He smiled. Come on, Matt. I've never hurt you before, have I? Yeah, research notes, Eric stuttered. I didn't think much of it, honestly. Thought it was part of the book's gimmick, but seeing Jake like this. Jake hunched his back, hands pumping in and out of fists. Like what, Eric? He growled. Don't talk to him, asshole, I said. Jake was bigger than me by about half, and in his current state, more unpredictable by a mile. If he came at me, I'd have one shot to clock him with a stone. Talk to me. Talk to you? He said, cocking his head. But you're so boring, Matt. All you've ever done is bitch, complain, and mope. His eyes drifted behind me, to Eric. Your brother's always been the interesting one. And now he's even gone and figured out my mother's secret. Eric, I said. I really need you to get me up to speed. The book, man. It's English, man. What about the book? I kept one eye on Jake, my hands gripping the stone so hard that I could feel my palm cramping. Grandma wasn't some writer documenting cryptids, Matt. He brandished the paperback, then snapped it open, flipping through it aggressively until he hard stopped on a page. He thrust it in my face. I pulled my head back and squinted. The ink had faded from years of aging, not to mention the water damage from the river crossing. The left page looked like a list of ingredients, with pencil markings over the print, and beside them a set of tiny, bulleted instructions. On the right was a diagram, too complex for me to properly make out given the condition of the book. Wait, what? Some of the markings looked to be runes. No, they were definitely runes. She wasn't looking for cryptids, Matt, Eric said breathlessly. She was making them.